What if the secret to unbreakable discipline wasn't born in a modern gym or a Silicon Valley boardroom, but on the blood-soaked battlefields of ancient Japan? Imagine waking up every morning with a sense of purpose so sharp, so unshakable, that hesitation simply doesn't exist. No more snooze buttons, no more empty promises to yourself, just a relentless drive, forged by centuries of tradition, that turns ordinary people into legends. Now, you might think this kind of iron willpower is something only found in old samurai movies or dusty history books. But here's the twist. The same principles that shaped the most feared warriors in Japan have quietly influenced some of the most successful figures in American history. From the grit of early pioneers crossing the wild frontiers to the unwavering focus of athletes and entrepreneurs who built empires from nothing, there's a hidden thread connecting them all, a code of discipline that refuses to bend even when the world tries to break it. But let's be honest, in today's world, discipline is almost a lost art. We're surrounded by distractions, comfort, and endless excuses. The average person is more likely to binge-watch a series than to push through a challenge. Yet, there's a reason why stories of the samurai still capture our imagination, even in the heart of American culture. It's because deep down, we know that true strength isn't about brute force or luck. It's about mastering yourself day after day, no matter the cost. So what did the samurai know that we've forgotten? What brutal truths did they live by that could transform your life right here, right now, in the 21st century? And why are more and more people in the US, from Navy SEALs to CEOs, turning back to the ancient philosophies to find an edge in a world that rewards comfort over courage? Get ready, because we're about to uncover the real story behind the samurai's code. Not the Hollywood version, but the raw, unfiltered method that forged warriors out of ordinary men. And by the end of this journey, you'll see exactly how you can use these same principles to break free from weakness, build unstoppable discipline, and start living with a purpose that can't be shaken no matter where you are or what you face. But before we dive into the heart of Bushido, ask yourself, are you ready to reject weakness and step onto the path that few dare to walk? Because once you start, there's no turning back. Bushido. The word alone carries a weight that's hard to describe, a sense of honor, duty, and sacrifice that goes far beyond any ordinary set of rules. But if you think Bushido was just a list of polite customs or a romanticized code for movie heroes, think again. For the samurai, Bushido was a matter of life and death. It was the backbone of their existence, a set of principles so strict that breaking them could mean losing everything, even your life. At its core, Bushido was built on 7 unbreakable virtues: righteousness, courage, compassion, respect, honesty, honor, and loyalty. These weren't just words to recite, they were the daily tests that separated the strong from the weak. Imagine living in a world where your reputation was more valuable than your own survival, where a single lie or act of cowardice could destroy your family's name for generations. That's the reality the samurai faced, and it's a reality that shaped their every decision. But here's where it gets interesting for us in the United States. The echoes of Bushido can be found in the stories of America's own legends. Think about the code of the early frontiersmen, who risked everything to carve out a new life in the unknown. Their word was their bond, and loyalty to their group could mean the difference between life and death. Or consider the soldiers of World War II, who carried a sense of honor and duty that pushed them to acts of courage most of us can barely imagine. Even today, the US military's core values, integrity, service before self, and excellence, mirror the ancient virtues of Bushido. But Bushido wasn't just about being tough. It demanded compassion and respect, even for your enemies. It required honesty so absolute that a broken promise was seen as a stain that could never be washed away. And above all, it demanded loyalty, not just to a master or a cause, but to a higher purpose. This is why the samurai was so feared and respected. They weren't just skilled fighters, they were living embodiments of a code that demanded everything and gave nothing for free. In a world where shortcuts and half measures are the norm, Bushido stands as a challenge, a reminder that greatness is never accidental. It's built day by day through choices that most people aren't willing to make. And while the samurai's world may be gone, the code they lived by still has the power to transform anyone willing to embrace it. But what did it actually look like to live by Bushido? What happened inside the walls of a dojo where young warriors were stripped of weakness and rebuilt from the ground up? The answer is more intense and more relevant than you might think. And it's in the next chapter that the true forging begins. Step inside the walls of a samurai dojo, and you'd find a world that would break most people before it ever built them up. For a young recruit, the journey didn't start with a sword or a suit of armor. It began with humility, hardship, and a daily grind that tested every ounce of character. The dojo was less a training hall and more a crucible, a place where boys were stripped of ego and comfort, then slowly reforged into warriors. Picture a teenager, barely more than a child, entering this world for the first time. He's not handed a weapon. Instead, he's given a broom. His first lessons are in silence, service, and obedience. He wakes before dawn, scrubs the floors, hauls water, and serves tea to his elders. Every mistake is met with correction, not out of cruelty, but because the smallest error in battle could mean death. The message is clear. Before you can master others, you must master yourself. This process might sound harsh, but it's not so different from the rites of passage that shaped American legends. Think of the young men who joined the Civilian Conservation Corps during the Great Depression, leaving home to work in remote camps, building roads and planting forests from sunrise to sunset. Or the raw recruits at Paris Island, where U.S. Marines are pushed to their limits, stripped of individuality, and rebuilt as part of something greater. In both cases, the transformation is brutal, but it's also the foundation for unbreakable strength. Inside the samurai dojo, the training was relentless. For months, a student might repeat the same basic movement thousands of times, day after day, until it became second nature. There were no shortcuts, no instant gratification. The master watched for signs of impatience or arrogance, knowing that a warrior who couldn't endure boredom or frustration would never survive the chaos of real combat. Only when the student's mind was as disciplined as his body did he earn the right to learn more advanced techniques. But the real test wasn't physical, it was psychological. The dojo was designed to break down the ego, to force each student to confront his own fears, doubts, and weaknesses. In this way, the samurai tradition echoes the stories of American pioneers and soldiers who faced the unknown, not just with strength, but with humility and resilience. The lesson is timeless. True power comes from enduring discomfort, embracing discipline, and learning to serve before you lead. And just as the samurai emerged from the dojo transformed, so too did America's greatest leaders and innovators rise from their own trials by fire. Whether it was the battlefield, the frontier, or the training ground, the process was the same: break down, rebuild, and emerge stronger than before. But the forging didn't end at the dojo door. The next step was even more intense, pushing the mind and body to the absolute limit. This is where the philosophy of Shugyo comes in, a method so extreme it makes ordinary training look like child's play. And it's here that the true transformation begins. Shugyo. The word itself means austere training, but that translation barely scratches the surface. For the samurai, Shugyo was the ultimate test, a journey into voluntary suffering, where comfort was the enemy, and the only way forward was through pain. This wasn't about building muscle or learning flashy moves. It was about forging a mind that could not be broken, no matter what the world threw at it. Imagine standing beneath a freezing waterfall before sunrise, the water crashing down on your head, your body screaming for relief, or running drills in the dead of winter, hands numb, breath visible in the icy air, with no promise of warmth or rest. These weren't punishments, they were rituals. The samurai believed that only by pushing themselves to the edge could they strip away weakness and discover who they truly were. Comfort, they believed, was a trap. Only in discomfort could you find your real limits and then shatter them. This philosophy might sound extreme, but it's not as foreign to American history as you might think. Look at the stories of the early settlers who crossed the continent in covered wagons, braving hunger, storms, and uncertainty for months on end. Or the legendary Hell Week, endured by Navy SEAL candidates, where they blur together in a haze of exhaustion, cold, and relentless challenge. In both cases, the lesson is the same: greatness is born in hardship, not in comfort. Shugyo wasn't just about physical endurance, it was a mental crucible. The samurai used these trials to silence the inner voice that begged for escape, to train themselves to act with clarity and resolve even when every instinct screamed to quit. This is the same mindset that has driven some of America's most iconic figures. Think of the astronauts in the Apollo program, locked in simulators for hours, rehearsing every possible disaster until fear became just another obstacle to overcome. Or the civil rights activists who faced violence and hatred with unbreakable resolve, refusing to back down even when the cost was high. Today, the spirit of Shugyo lives on in the growing movement of voluntary discomfort. Cold plunges, ultramarathons, early morning workouts. These aren't just fitness trends, they're modern echoes of an ancient truth. If you want to grow, you have to choose the hard path. Neuroscientists now confirm what the samurai knew centuries ago: deliberate hardship rewires the brain, building resilience and focus that can't be faked. But there's a dark side too. The line between discipline and self-destruction is razor thin. History is full of stories of both in Japan and the US of those who pushed too far, who mistook suffering for strength and lost themselves in the process. The lesson isn't to seek pain for its own sake, but to use it as a tool, a weapon against weakness, a way to reveal the person you're truly capable of becoming. Shugyo is not about proving something to the world, it's about proving something to yourself. It's about choosing the hard road, not because you have to, but because you know that's where transformation happens. And as we'll see, the samurai didn't just endure these trials, they emerged from them with a new sense of purpose, ready to face any challenge. But how do you take these ancient lessons and apply them to your own life, right here in the modern world? The answer might surprise you, and it's closer than you think. Discipline is a double-edged sword. For every story of greatness forged in the fires of hardship, there's another, quite a story of someone who pushed too far and paid the price. The samurai understood this risk all too well. Their world was built on the razor's edge between strength and self-destruction, the same code that demanded unbreakable resolve could, if taken to the extreme, become a prison one that trapped warriors in cycles of guilt, shame, and even despair. In feudal Japan, the consequences of failing to live up to Bushido were severe. A single mistake could mean not just personal disgrace, but the ruin of an entire family's honor. The pressure was relentless, and for some, the only escape from dishonor was the ultimate act of self-sacrifice. While these rituals are often romanticized in movies, the reality was far more tragic. The pursuit of perfection, when twisted by fear and shame, could destroy the very people it was meant to strengthen. This dark side of discipline isn't unique to the samurai. American history is filled with its own cautionary tales. Consider the stories of early industrial workers during the rise of the American factory system. Driven by a culture that glorified relentless work and self-sacrifice, many pushed themselves to the brink, working endless hours, ignoring pain and exhaustion, all in the name of progress. The result: burnout, broken families, and lives cut short by stress and overwork. The same drive that built cities and industries also left scars that lasted for generations. Or look at the world of elite sports, where the no pain, no gain mentality has produced champions, but also a hidden epidemic of injuries, mental health struggles, and shattered dreams. The pressure to be the best, to never show weakness, can lead athletes to ignore warning signs until it's too late. Even in the military, where discipline is a matter of life and death, the cost of unrelenting standards can be devastating. Stories of soldiers returning home with invisible wounds, PTSD, anxiety, depression, remind us that the line between resilience and ruin is dangerously thin. In today's hustle culture, the message is everywhere: grind harder, sleep less, never quit. Social media is filled with influencers preaching the gospel of 4 a.m. wake-ups and endless productivity, but behind the highlight reels, there's a growing awareness that this kind of discipline, when left unchecked, can backfire. Burnout is now recognized as a real and rising threat, not just in high-pressure careers, but in everyday life. The very tools meant to build us up can, if misused, tear us down. The samurai, for all their legendary strength, were not immune to these dangers. Some became so obsessed with perfection that they lost sight of the virtues that made Bushido powerful in the first place: compassion, humility, and balance. The lesson is clear: discipline is essential, but it must be guided by wisdom. True strength isn't about never breaking, it's about knowing when to push forward and when to step back, when to endure and when to heal. So, as you seek to apply the lessons of Bushido and Shugyo in your own life, remember this: the goal isn't to become a machine, but to become fully human. The path of the warrior is not just about conquering weakness, but about understanding your limit, respecting your mind and body, and finding the balance that leads to lasting greatness. Because in the end, the strongest steel is not the one that never bends, but the one that can withstand the fire and emerge time and again, unbroken. But there's another side to the samurai story, one that's often overlooked. It's the secret ingredient that kept these warriors grounded, even as they walked the edge of discipline and danger. And it's this hidden wisdom that holds the key to true resilience, both then and now. There's a side of the samurai story that rarely makes it into movies or motivational speeches. It's not about the sword fights or the stoic faces. It's about the hidden qualities that made these warriors truly unbreakable. While the world remembers the samurai for their discipline and fearlessness, the real secret to their strength was something far more subtle: humility, adaptability, and the willingness to let go of ego. In the heart of every dojo, after the sweat and repetition, came lessons that had nothing to do with combat. Masters would remind their students that pride was the enemy of growth. A samurai who thought he knew everything was already defeated. This humility wasn't weakness, it was the foundation for lifelong learning. The greatest warriors were always students, open to new ideas, willing to admit mistakes, and quick to seek advice from others. This mindset echoes through some of the most powerful stories in American history. Take Abraham Lincoln, for example. He's remembered as a leader who held the nation together during its darkest hour, but his real genius was his humility. Lincoln filled his cabinet with rivals and critics, people who challenged him and forced him to see his own blind spots. He listened, adapted, and changed course when necessary. That willingness to learn, to accept criticism, and to put the mission above personal pride is what made him a legend. Or look at the Apollo 13 mission a moment, when American astronauts faced disaster in the cold vacuum of space. The world watched as a team of experts, engineers and astronauts worked together, setting aside ego and status, to solve problems no one had ever faced before. Their success wasn't just about technical skill, it was about humility, teamwork, and the ability to adapt under pressure. The lesson is clear: the greatest victories come not from stubbornness, but from the courage to change and the wisdom to listen. The samurai also practiced something called the death of the ego. This wasn't just a poetic phrase, it was a daily discipline. Warriors were taught to accept criticism, to ask for feedback, and to admit when they were wrong. They understood that ego was the real enemy, the voice that whispered excuses and resisted growth. By letting go of pride, they became more resilient, more adaptable, and ultimately more powerful. In modern America, this lesson is more relevant than ever. In a culture that often rewards loud confidence and self-promotion, the quiet strength of humility can seem out of place. But look closer, and you'll see that the most successful people, whether in business, sports, or public service, are those who never stop learning. They seek out mentors, embrace new challenges, and aren't afraid to start over when necessary. They know that true mastery is a journey, not a destination. There's also a surprising side to the samurai story. Not every warrior followed the rules perfectly. Some broke with tradition, challenged authority, and survived by thinking differently. These rebels weren't outcasts, they were often the ones who changed history. In the US, the same pattern appears. Innovators and pioneers, from Thomas Edison to Steve Jobs, built their legacies not by following the crowd, but by questioning the status quo and daring to be different. So, what's the real secret of the samurai? It's not just about discipline or toughness, it's about the courage to be humble, the strength to adapt, and the wisdom to keep learning no matter how much you've already achieved. This is the hidden ingredient that turns ordinary effort into extraordinary results. And it's a lesson that anyone, warrior or not, can use to build a life of purpose and resilience. But how do you take these ancient secrets and put them to work in your own life, right here and now? The answer lies in translating these timeless principles into daily action, a process that's as practical as it is powerful. And in the next section, you'll discover exactly how to do it. So how do you take the ancient wisdom of the samurai and make it work in the chaos of modern American life? The answer isn't about trading your suit for armor or your morning coffee for a katana. It's about translating those timeless principles, discipline, humility, resilience, into habits that fit your world, your challenges, and your ambitions. Start with the core of Bushido, the virtues that shaped every samurai: righteousness, courage, compassion, respect, honesty, honor, and loyalty. These aren't just relics of the past, they're the foundation of every great achievement in American history. Think about the civil rights leaders who stood up for justice even when it meant risking everything, or the firefighters and first responders who run toward danger, not away from it, because their sense of duty outweighs their fear. These are modern warriors living by a code that's as old as time. But how do you build this code into your own life? Begin with small, deliberate actions. Righteousness means doing the right thing, even when no one is watching, like returning a lost wallet, or standing up for someone who can't defend themselves. Courage isn't just about facing physical danger. It's about having that tough conversation you've been avoiding, or taking the first step toward a goal that scares you. Compassion is found in the way you treat your co-workers, your family, even strangers on the street. Respect is shown not just to those above you, but to everyone you meet, from the CEO to the janitor. Honesty and honor go hand in hand. In a world where shortcuts and half-truths are everywhere being known, as someone who keeps their word is a rare and powerful thing. Loyalty, too, is about more than just sticking with your friends. It's about committing fully to your goals, your values, and the people who depend on you. Now let's talk about Shugyo, the art of voluntary discomfort. You don't need to meditate under a waterfall or train in the snow to practice this. Instead, choose your own version of hardship. Maybe it's waking up an hour earlier to work on your dreams before the world wakes up. Maybe it's hitting the gym when you'd rather stay in bed, or tackling that project you've been putting off. The key is to do something difficult on purpose every single day. This is how you build mental muscle, the kind that lasts when motivation fades. This approach isn't new to America. During the Great Depression, millions of people learned to survive on less, to work harder, and to find meaning in struggle. In the military, recruits are still pushed to their limits, not just to test their bodies, but to forge unbreakable minds. Even in the world of business, The most successful entrepreneurs are those who embrace discomfort, who see every setback as a lesson, every failure as a stepping stone. But there's a warning here too. As we saw with the samurai, discipline without balance can become self-destruction. The goal isn't to punish yourself, but to grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. That means knowing when to push and when to rest, when to fight and when to adapt. It means building routines that support your goals, but also leaving room for flexibility when life throws you a curveball. One powerful tool is public commitment. The samurai made vows in front of their peers, binding their honor to their word. You can do the same. Share your goals with friends, fairly or even online. When you make your intentions public, you create accountability, and that can be the difference between giving up and pushing through. Finally, remember that the path of the modern warrior isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Every day you choose discipline over comfort, honesty over shortcuts, and courage over fear. You are walking the same path that built legends both in ancient Japan and right here in America. But there's one more lesson the samurai lived by, a principle that can change the way you see every moment. It's about the power of now and why every decision you make today matters more than you think. There's a Japanese phrase that captures the urgency and beauty of every moment: Ichigo Ichie. It means one time, one meeting, the idea that each encounter, each opportunity is unique and will never come again. For the samurai, this wasn't just poetic philosophy, it was a way of life. They understood that every sunrise, every challenge, every decision was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to shape their destiny. And if you look closely, you'll see that this same principle has quietly shaped some of the most pivotal moments in American history. Think about the pioneers who set out across the continent, knowing they might never get another shot at a new life. Or the soldiers at Normandy who understood that the fate of the world could hinge on a single day, a single hour, a single act of courage. In those moments, hesitation wasn't an option. The power of now, the willingness to act, to seize the moment, became the difference between history made and history missed. But Ichigo Ichie isn't just for warriors or heroes. It's for anyone who's ever stood at a crossroads wondering whether to take the leap or play it safe. It's the student deciding whether to speak up in class, the entrepreneur debating whether to launch that idea, the parent choosing to put down their phone and truly listen to their child. Every day, we're given moments that will never repeat themselves. The question is, will we recognize them and will we act? In modern America, it's easy to fall into the trap of waiting for the right time. We tell ourselves we'll start tomorrow, next week, or when things feel perfect. But the truth is, there is no perfect moment. The samurai knew that life could change in an instant, and that the only way to honor the present was to give it everything you had. This mindset is what drove the Apollo astronauts to risk everything for a shot at the moon, what inspired civil rights marchers to stand up for justice even when the odds were impossible, and what pushes everyday people to make choices that change their lives forever. Science now backs up what the samurai and America's greatest risk-takers always knew: the brain is wired to respond to urgency. When you treat each moment as precious, you focus more, act faster, and remember the experience more deeply. This is why athletes talk about being in the zone, why artists lose themselves in their work, and why some of the best decisions are made in the heat of the moment. But Ichigo Ichie is also a reminder to be present. In a world of endless distractions, it's easy to let life slip by while we're glued to screens or lost in thought. The samurai practiced mindfulness not as a trend, but as a survival skill. They trained themselves to be fully aware, fully alive in every situation, because they knew that the next moment was never guaranteed. So what does this mean for you? It means that the workout you're tempted to skip, the conversation you're afraid to have, opportunity you're hesitating to grab, these might be the moments that define your future. It means that every day is a chance to start over, to choose discipline, to reject weakness, and to live with the intensity and purpose of a warrior. The power of now isn't just about seizing opportunities. It's about honoring the gift of this moment, right here, right now. It's about understanding that you have one shot at today, and that what you do with it matters more than you think. The samurai lived every day as if it could be their last, not out of fear, but out of respect for the fleeting nature of life. And in doing so, they found a kind of freedom and strength that still inspires you centuries later. As you move forward, remember, Ichigo Ichie, one time, one meeting. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make this moment perfect by giving it everything you have. Because the path to greatness, whether in ancient Japan or modern America, always begins with the choice to act right now. So now you stand at a crossroads, just like the samurai did centuries ago. And just like countless Americans have throughout history, you've seen how Bushido and Shugyo weren't just ancient rituals, they were blueprints for transformation forged in the fires of hardship and tested on real battlefields. You've learned how the samurai's code of discipline, humility, and relentless self-improvement echoes through the stories of pioneers, soldiers, inventors, and everyday heroes who shaped the United States. But here's the truth, knowledge alone changes nothing. The samurai understood that wisdom without action is just another story, another legend lost to time. The same is true in America's history. The Declaration of Independence was just ink on paper, until people risk everything to make it real. The civil rights movement was just a dream until ordinary men and women stood up, marched, and refused to back down. Every great leap forward, whether it was landing on the moon or building a business from scratch, began with a single, often uncomfortable decision to act. Now, the choice is yours. Will you let these lessons fade into the background, just another video you watched? Or will you use them to forge your own path? Will you be the person who knows what to do but never does it? Or will you become the kind of person who rejects weakness, embraces discomfort, and builds discipline one day at a time? This isn't about becoming a samurai or living in the past. It's about taking the best of what they knew and applying it to your life right here, right now. Maybe your battlefield is the boardroom, the classroom, the gym, or your own mind. Maybe your challenge is starting a business, repairing a relationship, or simply getting up every morning with purpose. Whatever it is, the principles remain the same. Act with integrity, face your fears, serve others, and never stop learning. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. Just as the samurai trained together, just as American heroes leaned on their communities, you have the power to create your own circle of accountability. Share your goals, make your commitments public, encourage others to join you. When you declare your intentions out loud, you turn a private wish into a public promise, and that's where real change begins. So, what will your modern Shugyo be? What challenge will you choose to face every single day for the next 30 days? Will you rise before dawn to work on your dreams? Will you push through discomfort to build a new habit? Will you finally tackle that project you've been avoiding, or have that conversation you know you need to have? Write it down. Say it out loud. Share it in the comments below. Because when you put your challenge into words, you make it real and you invite others to hold you to it. The samurai knew that strength wasn't about avoiding pain, but about transforming it into purpose. They understood that every day was a new chance to reject weakness and build something lasting. And so did the Americans who built this country, brick by brick, dream by dream, never backing down from the hard road. Now it's your turn. The path is open, but it won't walk itself. Will you step forward, or will you let another day slip by? The choice is yours, and it's one you'll have to make again and again every single day. But if you choose to act, to commit, to live with the discipline and courage of a warrior, you'll discover a strength you never knew you had. So what will you choose? The comfort of the familiar, or the challenge of the unknown? The easy path, or the warrior's way? The next chapter of your story starts now. Reject weakness, embrace the journey. And remember, greatness is never an accident, it's a choice made one moment at a time.